Project Ascension by The Myth and Darthlink22, Chapter 6. Rainbow, in spite of the disadvantage they had, showed only bravery to the faces of the two Pegasi who had somehow tapped into magic to give them elemental forms. She took a defensive position, with Twilight and Applejack standing by her side as Red's flames were dancing around him. Burn, baby! He shouted out the words. Rainbow Dash and the others were encircled by a ring of flames, trapping them along with Red and Yellow. The fire touched the newspaper clippings and notes, burning them into ash. Spike, Applebloom, and Sweetie Belle made their way behind Fluttershy, who only showed fear as the flames surrounded them. Come here! I'll make it all stop. Red called out to Rainbow before standing before him. Rainbow decided to charge in. You've got a big mouth for some pony who's going to be crippled for life! She kicked him in the gut, and he went flying into the wall of flame. But instead of being scorched, the flames brushed off at him, and he picked himself off, dusting his feathers mockingly to Rainbow. Oh, you've got to be kidding me! Yellow decided to make her move. Her feathers came flying out toward Twilight and Applejack. Let's see you dodge this! She cried out to them as her flying feathers honed in on their targets. Twilight reacted by casting a shield spell, encasing her and Rainbow in a lavender orb. That's useful, but that's to be expected of Celestia's little bitches. Twilight released the shield, and her horn started charging with magic. You haven't seen anything yet! A beam of condensed magic shot out to Yellow, whereupon impact she let out a groan and fell to the ground. So she immediately stood up again, dodging Applejack, who thought it wise to try and buck her while she was down. Meanwhile, Red was facing Rainbow in what looked like a stalemate. His flames could not catch up to Rainbow as she was flying around him and fly-kicking him whenever she had a chance. But it seemed like the kicks themselves had no serious impact. Red looked behind him and saw Fluttershy, Rarity, and Pinkie guarding the foals who accompanied them. Then he saw Spike, and as Rainbow made another attack, he countered and sent her flying before she could stand up again. Hey, Yellow! Looks like they brought the doll with them. Yellow turned to look at Red, confused at first, but when Red pointed at Spike, she saw him and smirked at what she was seeing. Spike became even more afraid as the two looked down with greed and wickedness. Thinking what I'm thinking, Red? Yep. Let's take him in. Red jumped into the wall of flame, surprising the company, but Yellow kept her calm. With a sizzling sound resounding around Spike, Red jumped out and grabbed the dragon in his hooves as he was hovering above the party with his bounty. Saying that this didn't set well with Twilight was an understatement so big that not even Celestia could have seen bigger. Her eyes flashed with intense white as she levitated herself off the ground. When she spoke, it was in a booming voice that would have done Luna proud. Let go of him! Before Red could obey, Twilight shot out a beam of pure magic, which struck him in the barrel, sending him into the ground. Spike fell, landing safely on his mother's back. Red recovered just in time to dodge another blast of magic, then another. The lavatory unicorn kept coming, motivated by her child's safety. Red shot his flames forward, but they bounced harmlessly off Twilight's shield. Stand aside, Spike, she instructed her son, who immediately leapt off his mother's back and ran toward Rarity and the others. Twilight's fur began to sizzle and char as her rage built up, and her whole body became a living inferno. Red was staring in awe at the unicorn's magic, but soon turned to horror when she fired a magical beam at him. He hastily dodged the beam, but when it struck the wall behind him, it exploded on impact, sending nearly every pony save Twilight flying. Screw this! Yellow muttered. We've destroyed the notes. Let's go. Good idea, Red said, jumping back through the flames into the safety of the outside world. He parted a path for Yellow, who managed to follow through before the path closed, leaving the rest trapped. But only for a moment. Twilight's sheer will activated her magic. With great effort, she manipulated the flames to step aside for them. Most of the rescue party ran out, stopping to catch their breath. But not Rainbow Dash. She kept flying at top speeds, chasing after the two magical Pegasi. After a few twists and turns, she was outside, just in time to see the Pegasi flying off. Oh, no, you don't! She yelled, flying after them. She ended up tackling Yellow, wrapping her forewings around the sides and locking her wings. The two began falling to the ground. Tell me where Scootaloo is, or I'll... She never finished the threat. At that point, several volts of electricity ran through her. She let go of surprise and pain, allowing Yellow to regain her altitude. Rainbow Dash, however, hit the ground, stunned with her body going into spasms from shock. Yellow slipped down to finish her off, but Red stopped it. Forget it. We need to get as much distance between us and the other mares as possible. Yellow snorted at this and yanked her hoof away, but looked at the stunned Rainbow. Consider yourself unlucky bits. Try and follow us, and you won't be so lucky. She sneered as she and Red made their way. Rainbow tried standing up, but her hooves gave in as he fell to the ground again. Fuck! Mountain climbing was not one of Scootaloo's strong points, as he was struggled not to fall where her pursuer was standing. Like a hanging piece of meat in a lion's den, Scootaloo was desperately trying to make her way upwards to where Canterlot was, and away from Black. Come on down, little lady. I won't bite. He yelled out to Scootaloo, in a tone fitting to a wolf inviting himself to a sheep's herd. Scootaloo thus kept climbing on, until she made it to a ledge. Seeing that she was not so far away from the top, she rested on the ledge for a moment, till she opened her eyes and saw the whole forest before her. Scootaloo admitted to herself that this was a view to treasure, but under the current circumstances, she could not enjoy it properly. Tell you what, I come down, and you don't get in. Rainbow Dash doesn't come after your hide. I'll tell you what, if you come on down, we'll let you see that rainbow mare again. How's that sound? He raised it to her, but he still got no answer as he climbed further up. Scootaloo reached her hooves to another ledge as he made her way up and stopped momentarily. A smile crept on her face when she got up and stood on the ledge. She looked down at Black, who was staring at Scootaloo. You promised I could see Rainbow! She yelled out to him, not caring if he promised or not. Thinking he struck gold, he triumphantly smiled for a moment. Cross my heart and hope to die, he sang crudely to her. Scootaloo just stared before standing up. Okay, just give me a moment to jump and glide. She backed away from the ledge, with Black rubbing his hooves in glee for his prize. As he looked, his smile immediately turned into a look of horror as a huge boulder came falling down from the sky. Oh, Buck! He made a dodge just in time, but where he stood was a miniature-sized crater with the boulder in the center, as Scootaloo jumped up to the lad's ledge as he jumped closer to her goal. Now get lost, you creep! You little bitch, Black snarled. When I get my hooves on you, if you thought I hurt you before. Rainbow Dash got to her hooves just in time to see Twilight and Fluttershy running up to her. Are you all right? No, the athletic mare snapped. They got away! Yeah, yes, but we wanted that. Rainbow Dash gaped. What? How can you say that? Because while you were fighting Yellow, she set some feathers and hair. We could follow her, and if she doesn't think we're following, she'll lead us right to Bloodwing. Dash brightened up. In a split second, she threw her forelegs around her friend. You're a genius! Let's get going. Not so fast. They're flying now. We can't all follow as easy. Spike's sending a message to the princess for a chariot. No, I'm sick of waiting. I'm going now! I figured. I'll cast a spell. Take Fluttershy with you. I can follow the tracer spell on you. Just be careful. And when you find Bloodwing, don't engage him without us. Rainbow grimaced, but not in agreement. Fine. Think you can catch up, Fluttershy? If it will save Scootaloo, she said with determination she put on whenever she was standing up for her friends. Twilight finished her spell. There, she said proudly, admiring her work. I programmed this to go faster, so you better hurry. You got it! She saluted. Without another word, the two Pegasi dashed off, Fluttershy barely keeping up with her more aggressive friend. Scootaloo finally reached the top of the mountain after much trial and error, which nearly cost her her life. As she observed her surroundings, she took one last look from where she had started, and was nearly baffled at the distance to where she was and to where the bottom stood. She jerked her head up quickly and turned back to the city of Canterlot, where she hoped against all hope to find any form of help. A part of her mind wished it was Rainbow Dash who would save her, but she had to face the reality it was very unlikely to happen. As she walked to the city entrance, she noticed the guards were not present at their posts. This alerted her senses, for she knew that the guards would never leave their posts unless something catastrophic happened to the city or any part of Equestria. She carefully watched past the entrance and began to relax as she noticed the normally uptight rich ponies walking among the streets. They might be able to help her, but some of them might be working for Bloodwing as far as she knew. Hope began to blossom in her as she further calmed her senses, with her taking first steps toward the castle, hoping the princesses would tend to her emergency. Why do I always get stuck with the sucky icky jobs? I don't give a crap about your opinion, Red. Let's just get the bitch and teach her a lesson. Scootaloo's fur stood on end when she heard the voice, the same voice belonging to an earth pony that chased her after his comrade. She slowly turned around and saw not only him and a red Pegasus, but the other blue earth pony with a yellow Pegasus mare. Black's facial expression had anger written all over it. Blue just looked stoic as always. Red was looking somberly at Scootaloo, oddly enough, and Yellow's mouth could not stop watering at the sight of Scootaloo. Yellow ruffled her face as she gulped in anticipation. Is that little filly the one who will bring us closer? She asked Blue as she leaned in rather lustily against his frame, but he did not move an inch at this accent. Yes, he answered her, not bothering to turn his head to his yellow companion, who snorted and turned her head mockingly, closing her eyes for added effect. Red just closed his eyes and shook his head. Look, kid, just come along with us, okay? Don't want you to get hurt further out here, right? He tried to reason with Scootaloo, but she backed away and galloped toward the castle, ignoring the pony she bumped into. Black's nostrils flared as he started staggering. That bitch is dead! As he spoke his words, a hoof came flying into his head from behind, and he groaned at the pain coursing through him. Blue, what the heck? Blue just stared at him, instantly silencing him in the process. We need her alive and unharmed. Is that clear? Scootaloo turned around and bolted, hoping to put as much distance as possible between her and the quartet of ponies sent after her. Seeing this, Yellow was off like a shot, flying after her target at top speed. Audience, I hope you join me in hoping that Scootaloo meets up with Fancy Pants, or Shining, or Cadence, or any of the nicer nobles. Which, now that I think about it, rank among 3? Or hoity-toity, photo fitness. Heck, I take Sapphire Swords at this moment. Any pony but these guys. This turned out to be Scootaloo's advantage. An alleyway wasn't too far from where she began running. She darted inside while the elder mare flew past it, going too fast to stop. The filly made it to the fence at the end, just as Red, Black, and Blue were coming around the corner. Black charged forward, looking ready to kill regardless of Blue's instructions. But Scootaloo jumped up, flapping her wings to make it over her obstacle. Black ended up hitting wooden planks. After a moment, he finally banged against the barrier, shouting unprintable words. Scootaloo kept running as Red flew over the fence, calmly chasing after her. Come on, kid! Don't make this harder than it has to be. Red sighed. The filly ignored and kept running, but in her heart she knew it was a futile gesture. She was tired, not having slept and barely eaten all day. Every muscle begged for rest, which she knew she would have to give very soon. She darted into the street, pushing past the various elite ponies who only gave a "Well, I never!" type responses to being pushed aside, most not even noticing her horn due to her going so fast. Red flew overhead, yelling apologies that her daughter was acting up. Scootaloo thought of begging for help, but memories of Ponyville flooded back to her. Blue and Black pulled the DSF scan. No doubt the others could as well. It was then that she saw her. Standing in front of the alleyway was Rainbow Dash. The elder mare looked frantic, as if she was looking for something. Rainbow! She yelled at the top of her lungs, running toward her. She dared to look back for a moment, and was relieved to see that she had lost Red. Rainbow! Rainbow Dash turned, and brightened when she saw who it was. Scootaloo! She stuttered as the younger filly jumped at her, throwing her forelegs around her neck. She hugged her back. Oh, kid! I'm so sorry! I should have never let those idiots take you! They're after me! They're... Okay, calm down, Rainbow Dash said. No need to attract attention to ourselves. How many are there? 4. 2 of them are Pegasi. Rainbow Dash started to frown slightly. Where are the other 2? Those 2 earth ponies that took you away. She asked calmly. Scootaloo looked behind her to see if they were there, and they were not. They're also there, but fast, Rainbow. We have to tell the others about this, now! She told her as she let go of Rainbow. But Rainbow had one hoof attached to his shoulder. Rainbow just sighed before looking at Scootaloo. There's just one little problem with that. Scootaloo raised her eyebrow at Rainbow's strange behavior. What's that? She asked her innocently. Rainbow closed her eyes and suddenly opened them as she looked maliciously at Scootaloo, a gleeful grin. I'm not Rainbow Dash. She told the filly, slammed a hoof into her before she could make any movement of escape. As she fell to the ground, her body went numb with spasms coursing in her vein, and the impostor placed a bracelet on Scootaloo's horn. The Rainbow Dash impostor suddenly groaned in pain as she shook her hoof to try and elevate the pain from the bruise forming on it. Oh, I just told them they were sending the wrong guy. Just as the impostor spoke the words, the impostor's body suddenly glowed, and like water pouring from above and hitting an object in a way, the fur and mane started changing to a snow-white unicorn stallion with a golden-brown mane. He looked down at his body with glee, using his magic to wrap another gag around the stunned filly's muzzle, just before lifting his head up to see 4 more ponies arriving at his location. You! Black yelled out to the white stallion. White! How the buck were you able to catch her? He demanded to know from him. But White just smiled and smiled coldly. Good looks and charms always catches the ladies, he said as he walked up to Yellow and placed his hoof under her chin, which he just slapped away as she looked rather irritable by his accents. Yellow snorted as she saw Scootaloo still lying on the ground. If that is true, then why don't you have a male friend yet? She snidely asked him, just as he rolled his eyes and turned them to the fallen Scootaloo. Blue walked up to Scootaloo and hoisted her up on his back. Listen, accomplice. Now, we must rendezvous back to the main base. White, stay on the guard post and disguise yourself as one of them. If you see some pony looking for this filly, lead them to a false destination. White saluted at his command. You got it, he said as he trotted away, using his magic to form another perfect disguise. Yellow, black, red, follow me. Scootaloo finally got her bearings together and tried to stand, but was pushed back down. She felt it, another restraint belt. She cried. She didn't struggle. There was no point. She was caught again, and no pony would save her. The fabric was tightened, and she was hanging by Black's mouth again. He was moving, following Blue carefully through the alleyways. She saw Yellow, who was smiling in triumph, holding her head up high as though he had won a gold medal. The same could not be said about Red, who just watched behind Black, and he looked rather miserable for whatever reason Scootaloo could not fathom at that time, nor did she care. Tears fell like rain from her eyes. They had her, and she knew she wouldn't get lucky again. They'd suppress her magic somehow, or have fail-safes for such an event as her blowout in the forest. A door opened, she realized. She was entering somewhere. This was that. Rainbow Dash would never find her now. No pony would. All her exhaustion overcame her. Her pain, her hopelessness. And then she blacked out. Chapter 7. Speed was her nature, and this would be the determining factor for whether she would fail or succeed. However, it was no test for herself or any challenge. This was to save a filly's life. A filly she had grown to love, yet failed during her most desperate of times. Rainbow Dash swore she was fighting at a speed where a double sonic rainbow could be seen, but not fast enough for her. Worse was her friend Fluttershy, who was not an experienced flyer like her cyan friend. Come on, Fluttershy! You can't slack off now! She yelled off to her friend, who was flapping her wings rather slowly as sweat seeped through her pores. Fluttershy wiped the sweat off her as she panted for air. I know, Rainbow. Just nothing! Those ponies are going to hurt Scootaloo even more if we don't hurry up! You want them to hurt Scootaloo anymore? Something inside Fluttershy snapped, as her eyes became blank before showing outrage beyond any measure. She bit her lips as she started to growl, releasing a scream. Those big, dumb meanies! She flew past Rainbow, who was stunned to see her friend fly as fast as she could on tournament day. She shook her head as she watched her friend set a course for Canterlot, and decided to do a sonic rainbow to catch up with her buttercream friend. Waiting was by far the most agonizing torture known to ponykind when a pony's life was in danger. So it was for Twilight and the others, as they waited for their carriage to arrive from Canterlot. They waited at the building's entrance, not daring to venture off into the forest for fear of their lives. As Twilight sat on her haunches, Spike was sitting next to his mother as he was fiddling with his claws in silence. So he looked at him and became worried for her son. "What's wrong, Spike?" Jack jerked his head up as he heard his mother's voice vibrating through the air. He looked up and saw her eyes filled with concern, knowing that lying would not make the situation any better. "Well, I'm just worried for what they're going to do to Scootaloo," he told her, though she knew this was only part of his worries, as he looked away from his mother's gaze. Twilight draped a leg over his neck and brought him closer. "That's not all, is it?" she asked him as he let out a sigh of defeat. "What was he doing with my scales? And why was he comparing your magic, Mom? I know you're a powerful unicorn, but what was it that he meant by genetic material? I don't know what he wanted with me or you, but whatever he's doing now, it scares me. It's like I'm a part of this somehow, and..." Twilight decided to nuzzle him as he saw tears forming in his eyes. "No matter what it is, we'll stop them," she assured him. "I won't let them get to you." "I guess you want me to go back home when the guards get here, huh?" Twilight sadly shook her head. "That's not such a good idea. Those ponies tried to get you. If I let you alone, they might be able to catch you. You come to Canterlot, and you'll stay in the castle. In the castle, understand?" Spike smiled at his mother's warning. "Yeah," he answered. He remained silent for a moment before he spoke. "What do you think Red meant when he called me the doll?" Twilight shrugged. "Maybe he was just talking about all the other eggs that had dolls in them." "I don't like this," he moaned, clutching his stomach. "It'll be over soon, Spike. I promise." Scootaloo awoke with a heavy metal collar around her neck. She was back in a cage, chained up again, a steel on her horn, and an additional shackle was around her sides, pinning her wings down. "You're more trouble than you're worth, brat. Consider yourself lucky I wasn't the one who caught you, because if I was, it's enough," Bloodwing said, nearing to the cage. "Now, Subject 10, you caused me quite a bit of trouble. I didn't expect you to need this so quickly. Hold her down." Black obeyed, holding the filly down. The collar came off. She didn't cry. She had no more tears left. The needle pierced her neck. Instantly, she screamed again, nearly deafening the two ponies working on her. This felt worse than the treatment, worse than anything she had ever felt. It was like her insides were being ripped apart and rearranged. All she could feel or think about was pain. She begged for it to stop, though her pleas went unheeded. How long it lasted, she didn't know, but when it did, it just stopped. That was it. It was over. "That should eliminate any further problems. Now, time for your next treatment." "No," she moaned, but didn't do much else. Struggle was pointless. Escape, impossible. She just whimpered as the needle came closer. She could feel the steel needle pierce through her skin, and she felt the pain of her usual treatment. She hardly said a word, even through the pain. By the time she regained her bearings, the collar had been placed back around her neck. Black brought up a bowl of gruel and dropped it on the floor, kicking it toward her. "Eat," he said bluntly. Scootaloo backed away. "Listen, you little bitch! You're lucky you're getting any food at all. Now eat!" "I'd rather starve," she said weakly. Black growled as he looked up to Bloodwing, who handed him an apparatus that he took hold of. Blue Head scarcely looked down while her partner pinched her nose. After a few moments, she couldn't hold her breath any longer and gasped for air. This allowed Black to shove the device in her, with Blue bolting it from behind her skull. Scootaloo's eyes widened in horror as she realized what was going to happen. She started thrashing against her chains as best as she could, but Yellow joined Blue in holding her still. Yellow forced her head upwards, with her eyes facing the roof. Black then stood over her and poured all of the gruel into the opening. Blue pinched her muscle to force her to swallow the food. She wished desperately she could cry right then. She wished she still had tears to shed. It was such a violation. How it was forced into her, How disgusting the taste was. How she had no longer had any control over anything. She felt water being forced into her necks. Her hydration. Not as disgusting, but equally horrible to experience. Hey! Will you cut it out? Scootaloo's eyes darted to where the voice was coming from, and saw a mildly disgusted Red looking at Black with hostile eyes. She's just a kid, he told him as he marched toward and shoved blue and yellow over her. He then did something she thought would never have happened. He took her apparatus from her mouth. She coughed as she looked at her first uninterrupted breaths of air. This did not rid her of the foul taste she had experienced, as he splattered her tongue for further results. Red did something else that surprised her. Black and Bloodwing. He took a tissue and wiped the residue of gruel from her face. What the fuck are you up to, Red? Black yelled out to Red as he stomped forward, Scootaloo's eyes displaying fear. Red, however, masked his anger with a menacing glare that petrified Black, if only for a little. This filly is the trump card to the project, and traumatizing her further will just make things more complicated, he told Black. He spread his wings, was starting to sizzle, but stopped when he felt a hoof on his shoulder. That is enough, Red. You are out of line here. It's true. We must not harm our dear subject, Bloodwing told Red as he lifted his hoof from his shoulder and looked at Scootaloo with lustful eyes, before giving Red a piercing stare. But your actions are treading between madness and reason. You do not want to step out of line again, do you? We do not want him to be harmed in any way, now, do we? He asked him rhetorically, with Red shuffling in his place and nodding only once. Good. Now, both of you, back to your stations. He ordered the two ponies to leave. Black was the first to leave, growling at Scootaloo before exiting the room. Red watched past Scootaloo, turned to her as he looked at her with sorrow in his eyes, mouthing, I'm sorry. Rainbow Dash was angry beyond belief. After following it all the way to Canterlot, Twilight's tracking spell had bounced off a wall in an alleyway and simply disappeared. What was that? The Cyan Mare flew her forelegs in rage. We came all the way here just to have it lead us to a wall? Rainbow Dash. I mean, we flew for nearly an hour, and we're no closer to finding her. Excuse me. I thought Twi knew what she was doing. Rainbow Dash. The Pegasus jumped and looked at her friend, a bit surprised. What?
Sorry.
Fluttershy sat back to her usual self.
It's just that, there was a secret entrance back at the lab. There might be one here.
Dash blinked. Oh, right. I knew that, she said sleeplessly, rubbing the back of her head. Well, let's look for an opening.
Shouldn't we wait for the others?
Rainbow sighed as she closed her eyes, opening to reveal her eyes becoming moist. The longer we wait, Fluttershy, the more Scootaloo is going to get hurt, she explained to her, before turning to the wall and tapping for any button that may open it. Fluttershy was shocked to see her friend so emotionally distraught. Even with Equestria being on the line, she had never seen Rainbow Dash shed many tears. She wondered when she last saw Rainbow Dash cry. For as long as they were friends, she had never seen her sheer tears of this magnitude before. Not when she was bullied by the other Pegasi at the Academy, not when she was kicked out of the Academy, not when she had her spirit broken on multiple occasions, not even when she broke her limbs in accidents. She never cried. Fluttershy's worried expression turned to one of pure determination, as she walked up to the wall and started investigating it with her lifelong friend. After what seemed like a half an hour, Fluttershy noticed a glowing lamp attached to the wall and wondered. She reached her hoof up and pulled on the lamp, revealing it to be a lever of some sorts. Just before at the lab, the wall started emitting sounds of mechanics working and gears turning before finally opening up to the two mares. When the dust settled in, Dash turned to Fluttershy and hugged her with all the gratitude she could muster. You're the best, Shy! She said as she turned to her shy friend and let go of her, failing to notice the blush forming on Fluttershy's face. Fluttershy quickly turned to face the wall.
It's not a problem,
she whispered to her cyan friend, before trotting up to the entrance of the opening.
I just hope we're not too late,
she said to Dash, who walked up beside her. Dash stomped her chest and ruffled her feathers. All I know is, we're going to get her back, she said to her friend, before her tone became more threatening. And if we see those 4 ponies, or even Bloodwing, they'll wish they were never born, she said with a murderous tone, before walking off into the unknown. Fluttershy was now slightly disturbed and frightened by her friend's behavior. Even with her research training thanks to Iron Will, she could never muster anything as frightening as what her friend just pulled off. The stare could even be in terms of fright it gave off, but the after effect of despair in the victim's mind she could and would never pull off. She turned around to see the sun setting and looked around the area they were in, spotting a piece of paper and a ruined pencil in a garbage can. She took them both and drew a giant arrow plastered to the side of the lamp. Soupy opened and closed before after she went in. "Fluttershy, hurry up!" Fluttershy jumped and yelled out an "Eep!" before rushing into the darkness, with the opening closing and leaving no trace of entry, save for an arrow next to a lamp, an arrow that could be seen by her friends. By the time Shining Armor arrived with his platoon, every pony was getting antsy. Relief swept through Twilight as he nuzzled the captain of the guards. "I didn't know you were coming, Shining," she said happily. "Uncle Shiny!" Spike cheered, hugging his leg. "Hey, kiddo." He smiled and rubbing his nephew's head. "And of course I came down. I'm not letting my little sister go after some nut job alone." "So, I take it you read up on Bloodwing?" He nodded. "I remember seeing him a few times when I was in basic training. Creeped me out. And after you went to the castle, he cornered me one day. He seemed friendly enough at first, but he started asking about your schedule, all about how powerful you were and if I had access to Spike." Twilight shivered. "Let's just get going to Canterlot. I'm sensing Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy there. I need to tell you something." The ride was a quick one, but long enough for Twilight to explain what she saw in the lab. Shining Armor looked disturbed. "The way he talked about you. He was obsessed with you. I can't imagine what he's doing to that filly." "Then we better hurry. I'm still sensing the two in town." "What the hell would Bloodwing be doing having a lab right in the capital city?" Applejack asked. "It's so near to the princess." "Who knows? Maybe he's figuring hiding in plain sight would work. Maybe there's some resource he needs." Shining Armor shrugged and sighed. "First the changeling slipped by me, and now this. My record's not looking too good."
Well, I just hope Rainbow Dash hasn't done anything impulsive."
Rarity sighed. There was a beat. "We better speed up." Scootaloo's vision was blurry, and her breathing became hoarse from all the screaming she could muster. Now she was laying on a hay bed, with her hooves bound together by shackles, and her newly formed horn had a metallic seal on it. She could not generate any more tears, as much as she wanted to express how hopeless the situation was for her. She thought time would fly faster as she tried to close her eyes to sleep. But that was also not an option, as the cell's doors opened and closed, with Red standing there before her with a popsicle in one hoof and a water ball in the other. He hovered toward her and helped her upright from her awkward sleeping position. "Here you go, kid," he whispered to her as he opened the water ball and placed it gently into her mouth, which she hesitantly accepted, feeling the ice-cold liquid in her mouth traveling down her throat. She bit on the ball's top and jerked her head upwards with the ball still less in her mouth. She gulped as many times as she could, but water overflowed from her mouth when the bottle emptied. When she was done, she released the bottle from her mouth as it fell to the ground with a thud, and she sighed in relief. Scootaloo looked back at Red, who was smiling at her. Though the peculiar thing was that his smile was sincere, and had no sense of malice. Red took the popsicle and unwrapped it, revealing it to be pure white. "Here. Eat it before it melts," he instructed her, which she did as she leaned in and took a lick of it. It was sweet, like any ice cream was, but the aftertaste had a salty flavor to it. It was delicious! Scootaloo took a bite of it, with her teeth freezing from the sudden frost, but she didn't care. She needed something sweet after that cruel experience. After she was done, Red took another tissue and wiped what remained of the ice cream from Scootaloo's mouth. "Why?" she asked him as she removed the tissue from her face. "I don't get it. Why are you doing this?" she asked Red, who just sighed as his ears drooped slightly. Red looked up to meet Scootaloo's eyes. "Look, just because I do this job doesn't mean I like it. Besides, you've been through enough for one day," he said dismissively as he stood up to face the door. "That's not all there is it?" Red just stood there before turning back to Scootaloo, frowning slightly at the filly's insight. "That easy to read, huh?" he asked coyly. "What does Bloodwing have on you?" She asked him as he looked down at the floor, not making any sound. If you escape and I come out of this alive, I'll tell you. He explained to her as he turned around to walk away. Scootaloo, however, was still curious about one thing.
Is Red even your real name?
She asked him. The silence in the room was so intense, she could hear a pin falling. No, he said finally, as his wolf rested on the cell's door.
What is your real name?
Red stood there for a very long time, before turning around and looking at the filly with an unamused face, was slowly turned to a smile. My name is Blaze. Got it memorized? He asked her as he huffed against his head. Scootaloo nodded before he finally left the cell. Just as he got away from the cell door, Blaze stood still deep in thought as he continued to throw and fight of what he just told the filly. Just a few hours ago, he did not even consider her a pony, merely a test subject for his superior schemes. But hearing her cry, seeing the look of despair on her face reminded him of something he had hoped to never see again. Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy carefully flew the dark alleyways. Every slight creak or sound sent them flying up toward the ceiling. They couldn't get caught now. They carefully kept moving until they saw him, Red, walking out of the room, closing the door behind him. He seemed upset, actually. It was confusing, to say the least. As soon as he was gone, Rainbow Dash flew up toward the door and tried to open it. It was locked. She realized too late, and it was steel. Nothing that could be broken through. Still, there was a small latch in the door, allowing Rainbow Dash to open it and look inside. She brightened. Scootaloo! Shining Armor led his sister and friends through the gates of Canterlot. Don't worry, we have the entire Royal Guard on standby. Do you still sense where Fluttershy and Rainbow are?
Vaguely,
Twilight admitted.
It seems it's being blocked.
Rarity hit her head with a huff.
Rainbow Dash probably did something to disrupt it. She's always so reckless.
Shining Armor sighed, and looking through the crowd, he frowned. There should be guards here. What's going... He trailed off when he noticed a single guard running up toward him. Soldier, what's going on? Sir, the person that needed to chase after a thief ran by this entrance. Nothing wrong. Shining nodded. What's the status on finding Bloodwing? Still ongoing, sir. We have our soldiers looking through the whole of Canterlot for the description of Bloodwing and his accomplices. So far, nothing has been reported in, sir. The guard answered his captain, but Shining had an odd feeling something was wrong. Twilight decided to match up to her brother's side.
Have you seen an orange filly around here?
She asked the guard, who was looking at her in confusion. Have not, ma'am. The guard said dismissively, though Shining could have sworn he saw a slight smirk on his face. Private. Shining began to speak in a rather hoarse tone. Sir? Shining looked down at the guard. What is the code of the private's vaults? He asked the guard, who gulped slightly. That, sir, would be 1025471, he said as he closed his eyes and opened again to only see Shining's face up close to his. Wrong answer. The guard suddenly found himself a navy aurora and was lifted up in the air. Another shockwave entered the aurora, causing the guard's coat to simply melt off, and revealing a soft white in aura. Hey, how did you know it was fake? White asked Shining, who gave him a wry smile. I didn't. I just saw signs that were not guard-like at all, and I know my men quite well. They do not act that way. She told him as Twilight was charging her own horn. Where's your base? She asked him threateningly, but White chuckled at the mare before him. You seem pretty lively. He answered her casually, but a beam of magic hit his gut, and the aura around him disappeared, causing him to fall on his haunches and coughing slightly. You pack a punch, lady. Tell us where Scootaloo is, or you'll be a cactus for life! Twilight told him, as her horn charged again. At that, White frowned. In a flash, he was back on his hooves. Silence, tramp! Then he shimmered. Water erupted in large streams around him as he grinned evilly. You better pray you can swim!